The synth coffee at the Meridian Overlook was the best in Covenant City, which wasn't saying much. It tasted like regret and burnt wiring, but it was strong. Aaron Vance nursed his third cup, his back to the sun-warmed railing, his gaze fixed on the middle distance where cargo haulers drifted between the glittering spires like sluggish metal whales. He came here for the view, but mostly for the silence. In the 17 years since the Accord Wars sputtered to a tense ceasefire, Aaron had become a connoisseur of silence. His therapist called it dissociative behavior. Aaron called it the only way to get through the day without the past chewing a hole in his gut. He was good at ignoring things. The too loud laughter at a nearby table. The flickering neon sign for a synth protein stand. The way his prosthetic left hand, sleek, gunmetal gray, a gift from the Battle of Corinth Gamma, always felt 3 degrees colder than the rest of him. He could tune it all out, building a wall of quiet between himself and a universe that had a habit of taking more than it gave. Which is why the Draconi female was so damn annoying. She stood about 6 feet away, a splash of vibrant, living color against the cafe's sterile chrome. In a city where 100 species rubbed shoulders daily, she still stood out. Her scales were a deep, forest emerald, shimmering with hints of teal and jade where the afternoon light caught their edges. She wore form-fitting flight armor of cobalt blue, its ceremonial sheen long ago scoured away by hard use and poor repair. A mane of platinum white hair, absurdly soft-looking, cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face that was undeniably reptilian yet strikingly elegant. Her wings were folded tight against her back, twitching with a nervous energy that her coiled tail mirrored. But it was her eyes that finally broke through Aaron's carefully constructed silence. They were pools of bioluminescent blue, glowing with an inner light. And in that light, Aaron saw something he knew intimately. Not curiosity, not wonder. Desperation. A hollow, hungry look he'd seen in his own mirror every morning for 18 months after Mirabelle died. He tried to look away, to go back to his coffee and his silent communion with the skyline. He couldn't. She took a step forward. Then another. Her movements were hesitant, her shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. She stopped just beyond what most humans would consider personal space. "Excuse me." Her voice was lower than he expected, melodic but with a faint, rasping harmonic, like wind stirring through crystal chimes. It was a beautiful sound, and it made the sadness in her eyes even more wrong. Aaron set his cup down with a soft clink. "Yeah, I am sorry to disturb your solitude," she said, her standard galactic precise but accented, the words shaped by a different mouth. I wondered if perhaps you might be willing to help me with something." Aaron felt the familiar, weary shield slide into place. "If you're selling something, I'm not buying. Directions to the transit hub are on the public boards. And if this is about the Church of the Cosmic Spiral, your missionaries already have my no, thank you, on file." Something flickered across her scaled features, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement of the brush off. "It is none of those things. I was wondering." She trailed off, her tail wrapping so tightly around her ankle it seemed painful. She looked down at her clawed, three-toed feet. This will sound strange. I apologize in advance for the strangeness. But I was wondering if you could perhaps give me a hug. Aaron Vance blinked. In his 41 years, a span that included 12 years in the Coalition Marines, 2 combat decorations, 1 medical discharge, and a subsequent stint as a single father that made frontline combat seem like a vacation, he had fielded some truly bizarre requests. His daughter, Penny, once woke him at 2 a.m. to demand he perform emergency surgery on a stuffed dinosaur with a suspected leak of fluff. A Garashi merchant on Tagris Station had, with a perfectly straight face, asked him to smuggle 17 containers of what was diplomatically termed aromatic cheese past customs. But this was new territory. Run that by me again, he said, his voice flat. The Draconi's luminous eyes seemed to dim. She looked ready to bolt. A hug. A physical embrace. I know it is an inappropriate request. Among my people, touch with an outsider is considered intimate. Sacred, even. A sharing of spirit. She swallowed, a visible ripple in her throat. I have not touched another living being in 4 years, 2 months, and 17 days. I saw you sitting here, and something about the way you held your cup, you seemed familiar with stillness. With loneliness. I thought, perhaps foolishly, that you might understand. That you might be willing to pretend, for one moment, that I am not a monster. The word monster hit the space between them like a physical thing. It hung in the air, charged and ugly. I am sorry, she whispered, already turning. I should not have asked. I will leave you in peace. Wait. The word was out of his mouth before his brain could censor it. His hand, the real one, shot out in a staying gesture. She froze, her wings giving a tiny, startled flare. Aaron didn't know why he said it. Maybe it was the crack in her voice on that last word. Maybe it was the memory of Penny, 6 months after the funeral, asking in a small, broken voice, "Daddy, why do hugs not feel warm anymore?" Maybe it was just that the sun was warm on his neck, the coffee was bitter but familiar, and sometimes the universe presented you with a simple choice: be kind, or turn away. For 3 years, he'd mostly chosen to turn away. Today, he was tired of it. He stood up, the servos in his prosthetic leg whirring softly. The docs had patched him back together after Corinth Gamma, but some wounds don't heal clean. His left side was a museum of scars and synthetic parts. He was still a big man, towering over the Draconi by half a foot, but she didn't flinch. She just watched him with those desperate, hopeful, terrified blue eyes. "Come here," he said, his voice gruff. He wasn't good at soft. She stared, disbelief warring with a hope so fragile it hurt to look at. You would do this? For a stranger? For a Draconi?" "I'm doing it for someone who asked," Aaron corrected. "Now get over here before I change my mind. And just so you know, I come highly recommended. My daughter gives me a solid 8 out of 10. She deducts points for being too tall and bony." A sound escaped the Draconi. A choked, half sob, half laugh. She moved toward him slowly, as if walking through water. When she was within reach, Aaron simply opened his arms. She stepped into the space he offered. The moment she made contact, her entire body shuddered. She was lighter than he expected, her frame bird-like under the armor and scales. She was warmer, too. A dry, radiant heat emanated from her. The cobalt armor was cool against his chest, but beneath it, he could feel the rapid, frantic drumbeat of not one, but two hearts, a staccato rhythm of pure, unvarnished need. He closed his arms around her, careful, awkward at first. His artificial hand rested between her wings, his real one on the small of her back. Her own arms came up, hesitant, then clasped behind him, her clawed fingers gripping the fabric of his jacket like a lifeline. Her wings, trapped between them, trembled violently. Her tail uncoiled from her ankle and wrapped around his prosthetic leg, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a shifting world. And then she cried. It wasn't a human sound. No tears fell from those bioluminescent eyes. Instead, her whole body convulsed in silent, racking sobs. A low, harmonic whine built in her throat, a sound of pure, ancient grief, like a cello string vibrating with a sorrow too deep for words. She clung to him with a desperation that bypassed Aaron's defenses and went straight to the wounded core of him. He knew this language. He'd spoken it himself. He held her. He'd held dying kids on battlefields who just wanted to hear a human voice. He'd held his wife as the last lights of her mind flickered and went out. He'd held his daughter through countless nights when the world was too dark and too quiet. This was the same currency. A soul adrift, reaching for an anchor. It's okay, he murmured into her platinum hair. It smelled of ozone, like the air after a storm, and something else, something clean and floral, like night-blooming jasmine from a world he'd never see. You're okay. You're not a monster. Whoever made you feel that way, they were wrong. He didn't know how long they stood there. A minute, an eternity. Long enough for the sun to shift slightly, for the shadows on the terrace to lengthen. Finally, the violent shudders subsided into tremors, then into a deep, exhausted stillness. She pulled back slowly, as if extracting herself from a dream. She wiped her face with the back of her scaled wrist, her eyes now blazing like captured stars. I have no words, she said, her voice rough. In my language, we have 17 distinct terms for gratitude, for debts of the spirit. None encompass this. Then don't use words, Aaron said, sitting back down and gesturing to the empty chair opposite. His own heart was pounding. Sit, have a coffee. Tell me why. What's your name? Sve Amareth, she said softly. Tell me why Sve Amareth is wandering around Covenant City asking grumpy veterans for hugs. She hesitated, her wings rustling. You would speak with me. Even now. Lady, I've got about 45 minutes before I have to pick my kid up from her friend's house. I can spend it watching ads for junk I don't need. Or I can spend it finding out why someone who looks like she could wrestle a starship into submission is walking around like her world ended. He nudged the spare chair out with his foot. Your call. She sat. The tale she told was one of quiet devastation. Her people, the Draconi, had remained neutral in the Accord Wars. They'd sold advanced materials and technologies to both sides, the Human Coalition and the Syntax Collective. We watched. We waited. We profited, Sve said, her gaze fixed on her clawed hands. When the war ended, we found that neutrality has a price. We are not trusted. We are tolerated, useful, but not welcome. We exist in the margins. I lost friends to Draconi pulse cannons, Aaron said, the memory a cold stone in his stomach. Sve flinched but didn't look away. I know. And I am sorry for your loss. I was not a warrior. I was a medical technician. I treated wounded. Human. Syntax. It did not matter. Pain is a universal language. When the war ended, I thought my skills would be needed. I was wrong. No one wants scales and wings in their sterile med bays. No one wants a monster touching their children. So she drifted. Cargo handler. Sanitation tech. The grunt work that required no trust, only a strong back. Covenant City was one of the few places in Coalition space where Draconi weren't actively harassed. Here, I am merely invisible, she said. Which, after a time, becomes its own kind of agony. The hug, Aaron prompted gently. Her tail coiled around the chair leg. My mate, Torin. He was killed in an industrial accident 4 years, 2 months, and 17 days ago. A conveyor malfunction. They said it was instant. She paused, the bioluminescence in her eyes flickering. After he was gone, there was nothing. No family. No friends who dared associate with a Draconi widow. Do you know, Aaron Vance, what absolute isolation does to a mind? I began to feel insubstantial, as if I had died with him and was simply too stubborn to fade. I needed a proof of being, a connection, something to say, you are here, you are real. She looked at him, and the raw honesty was almost too much to bear. I saw you. You sat with your own silence like it was an old coat. You carried loneliness not as a guest, but as a tenant. I thought, if anyone might understand the need to feel real, even for a moment, it might be you. I was prepared for rejection. For disgust. I was not prepared for kindness. Aaron's wrist calm buzzed. Penny. Time to go. He silenced it, leaned forward. Look, Sve, I'm not gonna pretend I know your pain. Different species, different scars. But I lost my wife 3 years ago. Neural degradation. There was no fixing it. I know what it's like to feel like a ghost in your own life. He took a breath. Here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna take my contact frequency. You're gonna call me tomorrow. We'll have coffee again. Not because I'm some saint or a hero, but because sometimes talking to someone who gets it is the only thing that keeps your head above water. Understood. Sve stared at him as if he'd just offered her the keys to a starship. You would do this. Willingly associate with. I'd do this for a person who's had a raw deal, he interrupted. Now, I really do have to go. Tomorrow. Same time. I will be here, she said, and the tentative hope in her voice sparked a corresponding warmth in his own chest, a feeling he'd thought had gone extinct. 3 months later, Aaron's sister, Vanna, stood in his kitchen, arms crossed, her expression a perfect storm of familial concern and impending interrogation. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice tight. "You've been having regular coffee dates, which, let's be honest, are dates, with an alien woman. You've introduced her to Penny. And you didn't think your only sister, who held your life together with duct tape and love after Mirabelle died, needed to be in the loop." "In my defense," Aaron said, stirring a pot of pasta sauce with more force than necessary, "it started as a one-time thing. A weird, one-time thing. It just kept happening. Multiple times a week. For months." Vanna's glare could have cut glass. "Aaron, the Draconi are pariahs. You know what people say. What they think. People think a lot of stupid things," he grunted. "Since when do we care?" "Penny," Vanna said, and the single word was a battering ram. "She's already the kid with the dead mom. Now you want her to be the kid whose dad is as friends with someone kind." Aaron set the spoon down and turned. Penny adores Sve. She calls her Miss Scales, and asks her a million questions about Draconi biology. Last week, Sve braided her hair with these little crystal beads from her homeworld. Penny hasn't taken them out. She sleeps with them. My daughter, who hasn't let anyone touch her hair since Mirabelle, is walking around with Draconi, sparkles. Sve is patient with her in a way I don't always have the energy to be. She listens to her, really listens. He met his sister's worried eyes. And she treats me like I'm a person. Not a broken soldier. Not a widower. Not just Penny's dad. A person. That's been in shorter supply than you'd think." Vanna's shoulders slumped slightly. The fight went out of her, replaced by a weary protectiveness. "Fine. But I'm meeting her. Officially. If she's going to be in my niece's life, I need to look her in the eyes and see what's there." The dinner was a revelation. Sve arrived not in her worn armor, but in a flowing, silver-gray garment that made her emerald scales shimmer like living jewels. She'd brought a gift for Penny. A small, expertly carved figurine of a Draconi astride a winged beast. "This is Windstrike," Sve said, kneeling to present it with a solemnity that captivated the 6-year-old. "A legend among my people. She was known for her courage, but more for her kindness. It is said she once flew through a meteor storm to rescue a ship full of lost younglings. I thought she might watch over you." Penny's eyes were saucers. "Can she really fly through rocks?" "In the stories, she flies through anything," Sve said. "She never gives up, no matter how hard the path." "I'm going to put her next to my bed," Penny announced, clutching the figurine. "So she can protect me. And so Mr. Whiskers can have a friend who's made of different material. Daddy says diversity is important." Aaron caught Vanna's eye across the room. Her expression had softened from suspicion to cautious approval. "Told you," he mouthed. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Later, as Aaron walked Sve to the transit station, she remarked, "Your sister is fiercely protective." Her interrogation was most thorough. "She lost Mirabelle too," Aaron said. "She's afraid of anything that might break what she helped put back together." Sve stopped beneath the glow of a street lamp, turning to face him. The city lights painted her in shifting colors. "Aaron, you must understand. What you have given me, this friendship, this connection to you and Penny, it is a treasure I thought lost forever. I would never do anything to jeopardize it, or to cause you pain." "Hearts, plural, right," Aaron said, deflecting the emotional intensity. "You Draconi have too." She blinked. "Yes. An evolutionary adaptation for high-altitude flight." "Why is this relevant?" "Lady, I've got a robot leg, a titanium hand, and a daughter who's convinced dinosaurs were just aliens who missed the last bus home." "Relevant is a flexible concept." She laughed, that beautiful, crystal wind chime sound that had become a fixture of his weeks. "You are a peculiar human, Aaron Vance. I prefer, uniquely adapted to life's absurdities." "That is many more syllables for the same meaning." "Yeah, but it sounds fancier." At the transit platform, she hesitated before boarding. "Same time tomorrow." "Same time." "Penny has a new theory about Stegosaurus plates being solar collectors. You're in for a 20-minute lecture." "I enjoy her lectures. They are delivered with great conviction." "That's one word for it," he smiled. As the magnetic car whisked her away into the neon night, Aaron stood on the platform, the ghost of her warmth still lingering. He wondered, not for the first time, when a simple act of kindness had quietly become the center of his new world. The trouble, when it came, arrived with the mundane cruelty of bureaucracy. Aaron was elbow-deep in the engine nacelle of a vintage Star Runner when his wrist comm screamed with a priority alert from Penny's school. The world narrowed to a tunnel. He made it there in record time, his heart a cold fist in his chest. Principal Kellix, a dear Teruvian whose multiple eyes all held a sympathetic but worried gleam, met him. "Mr. Vance, Penny is physically unharmed. But there was an incident." Penny was in the nurse's office, small and drawn, clutching the broken pieces of the windstrike figurine. The story tumbled out between sobs. A boy, Travis, had been repeating ugly things about Draconi. He'd grabbed Windstrike, called it a monster toy, and smashed it on the floor. Penny had pushed him. He said his dad's gonna send Miss Scales away. Penny wept into Aaron's shirt. "Because she's dangerous." "But she's not, Daddy. She's not. And Windstrike is broken." A cold, quiet rage settled over Aaron. He looked at Principal Kellix. "I want to speak to his parents." "Now, Mr. Vance," Kellix said carefully, "Travis's father is Harold Whitfield, Senior VP at Interstellar Commerce Bank. He has influence. The school board is aware of his strong views on interspecies relations. An escalation could have consequences. Are you telling me my daughter could be punished because a bigot's kid broke her property and she defended herself? I am advising caution. The situation is delicate." Delicate. The word was a spark to tinder. The following weeks were a grinding war of attrition. Harold Whitfield launched a campaign. He filed complaints with the Covenant Immigration Authority. Suspicious activity, improper influence on a minor, questionable work permit details. The machinery of prejudice, well-oiled and impersonal, cranked into motion. Aaron fought back. He hired Jackson Hart, a razor-sharp lawyer who lived for cases like this. He contacted reporters. He rallied what friends he had left. But the pressure was immense. And Sve, true to her instincts, began to pull away. Cafes were missed. Messages went unanswered. When he finally cornered her at her dismal apartment in the lower spire, the air thick with chemical fumes, she wouldn't open the door. "Aaron, please," her voice came through the tinny intercom, frayed with exhaustion. "You must stop." "Stop what?" "Fighting for you. For someone who cannot be saved. My work permit is suspended. They are investigating. If I am deported, I will survive. But if my presence costs you Penny, that is an unforgivable debt. I cannot be the reason you lose your daughter. That's not going to happen. You cannot know that. Please, Aaron, for Penny's sake, forget me." He stood in that grimy hallway, pleading, arguing, until his voice was hoarse. The door never opened. The 3 weeks that followed were a gray, hollow echo of the months before. Aaron went through the motions. Work, meals, helping Penny with her homework. The silence in his life was back, but now it was a presence, a ghost named Sve. Penny, however, refused to mourn. "Why won't Miss Scales come over?" she asked at dinner, her small face set in a stubborn line. "It's complicated, Jellybean. Because of the mean boy's dad. Partly. That's stupid." She crossed her arms. "She's our friend. Friends don't quit. Sometimes adults think they're protecting people by staying away." Penny studied him, her eyes far too wise for her age. "That's what she's doing. She thinks she's protecting us." "Yeah, baby, she does." "Well, she's wrong." Penny slid off her chair and marched to her room. She returned minutes later, clutching a piece of paper. "We're giving this to her." It was a crayon masterpiece. 3 figures under a swirling starfield. A small brown-haired girl. A tall man with one silver arm. A green, winged woman with a tail curled protectively around them all. In Penny's careful printing at the top, "Real family doesn't quit." Aaron's throat closed. "Penny. She needs to see it, Daddy. She's being scared and making a bad choice. But she's still our family. That's the rule." Aaron looked at his daughter, at the profound, simple truth in her art. The dam around his own heart cracked. "You're right," he said, his voice thick. "Let's go tell her." They arrived at Sve's building to find it surrounded by the slate-gray vehicles of the Immigration Authority. Aaron's blood turned to ice. He shoved through the gathered crowd, flashing his veteran's ID. "What's happening?" "Deportation order, sir." "Step back, please." "On what grounds?" "Permanent revocation of work permit. Subject is to be remanded to Draconi repatriation services." "Now, step back." "Deportation." They were going to send her back to a life of nothingness. The cold rage returned, white and pure. He stepped forward, and 2 officers moved to block him. That's when Penny, small and quick as a shadow, ducked under their arms and shot toward the building entrance. Penny, no. But she was gone, a flash of denim and determination. Aaron tried to follow, but the officers had him now, their grips firm. That's my daughter in there. We can't let you interfere, sir. On the 3rd floor landing, Penny burst into the hallway to find Sve being led from her apartment. The Draconi's hands were bound in mag cuffs. A harness pressed her wings flat against her back. Her head was bowed, her light all but extinguished. Then she saw Penny. Little one. No. You should not be here. You're wrong. Penny shouted, her voice ringing in the cramped hall. She dodged a surprised officer and threw her arms around Sve's legs. I can prove it. She thrust the crumpled drawing upward. Sve looked down, and the defeat in her eyes shattered into confusion, then into a pain so acute it was almost physical. See, that's you, and me, and Daddy. We're a family. Real family doesn't quit, Miss Scales. That's the rule. You said Windstrike never gave up. So you can't give up either. That makes you a hypocrite. And Daddy says those are the worst. A stunned silence filled the hallway. The officers paused, unsure how to handle a 6-year-old's moral stand. Sve stared at the drawing, her bound hands trembling. Little one, I cannot stay. The law can stick it in its exhaust port. Every adult in the hallway froze. Penny planted her hands on her hips, a tiny titan of indignation. My daddy fought in a war so people could be free. My mommy died 'cause her heart was broken. Miss Scales is the only one who makes Daddy smile like he used to. If you take her away, you're being the bad guys. And in stories, the bad guys lose. One officer shifted uncomfortably. Kid, you don't understand. I understand enough. Penny's eyes blazed with tears and fury. She never hurt anyone. She's a doctor. She helps people. She helped me when I was sad about Mommy. She helped Daddy remember how to be happy. If your rules say good people have to go away 'cause they look different, then your rules are stupid, and you should feel bad. Aaron finally broke free and charged up the stairs, arriving in time to see his daughter standing as a human shield between Sve and the galaxy, a crayon manifesto in her hand. Tell them, Daddy, Penny cried. Tell them she's family. Aaron looked at Sve, saw the tears tracing paths through the dust on her scales, saw the hope warring with a lifetime of expecting the worst. He looked at his daughter, a beacon of fierce, untarnished love. He looked at the officers, some ashamed, some just following orders. He drew himself up to his full height, the veteran, the widower, the father. She's right, he said, his voice clear and firm in the quiet hall. Sve Amareth is family. She's the best thing to happen to us in 3 very long years. And I will fight every bureaucrat, every bigot, and every bad law in this star system before I let you take her from us. The silence stretched. Then the senior officer, a grizzled woman with sergeant's stripes and eyes that had seen too much, keyed her calm. Central, This is Sergeant Edamar at the Amareth location. We have a situation. Define situation. The sergeant looked at Penny, still glaring. She looked at Aaron, solid and unyielding. She looked at Sve, weeping silently, leaning toward the family that claimed her. A procedural irregularity, Sergeant Edamar said, a faint, hard smile touching her lips. I'm recommending a 48-hour hold, pending a review of the humanitarian aspects of the case. On whose authority? On the authority of not wanting to be the one who explains to this kid why her family got torn apart over paperwork. She clicked off. All right, everyone, stand down. We're taking her to holding, not a transport. Let's get those cuffs off. The 48 hours became 72 as Jackson Hart worked his magic. Harold Whitfield's complaints unraveled under scrutiny, revealing fraud and improper influence. The Commerce Board members involved faced scandal. The case against Sve evaporated. Sergeant Edamar, it turned out, had lost her own son in the war. She'd seen enough families broken. Sve was released on a Tuesday, stepping into the sunlight like a prisoner granted amnesty. Penny didn't run this time. She launched herself, and Sve caught her, holding her close, her face buried in the child's hair. I told you, Penny mumbled into her shoulder. Good guys win. You were impossibly brave, little one, Sve whispered, her voice cracking. And foolish. And wonderful. Daddy says I get it from Mommy. Sve looked over Penny's head at Aaron, her eyes blazing with a light he'd thought was gone forever. She would be so proud of you both. We're proud of you, Penny corrected, pulling back. That's the point. People need people. Even dragon people need not dragon people. It's called interdependence. I learned it. Sve laughed, a sound like water over stones. You will be a formidable adult. I know. I have plans. Aaron walked over. Sve set Penny down gently. They faced each other, the veteran and the exile, surrounded by the mundane sounds of the city coming back to life. I must apologize, Sve began. For pushing you away. For my lack of faith. Don't. Aaron said softly. You were trying to protect us. It's what family does. Even when they're wrong. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. He reached out, his human hand taking her scaled one. But here's the thing about being wrong. It only matters if you don't learn. You want to make it up to me. Don't run. Next time it gets hard. And it will, because life's a messy business, you stay. You stay and you fight with us. That's all I want. Sve looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. I am not certain I know how to stay. My life has been a lesson in leaving. Then we'll teach you, he said, glancing at Penny, who was watching with the gravity of a master planner. Both of us. You'd do that, after all this. Sve, Aaron said, a real, easy smile spreading across his face for the first time in weeks. 3 months ago, you asked me for a hug because you'd forgotten what it felt like to be real. I said yes because something in your eyes asked me to be human again. Best decision I've made in years. So, yeah, I'd do this. I'd do a lot more. If you're willing. More than what? I don't know yet. Penny seems to think you should live with us and teach her to fly. I'm thinking we start a little slower. Dinner. Every night. See how it goes. Sve's laugh was pure, unfiltered joy. Dinner sounds acceptable. Good. Tomorrow. Our place. 7 p.m. I will be there. Penny wedged herself between them, grabbing one of each of their hands. Okay. This is the happily ever after part now. The rules are: no more running, no more sad alone time, and mandatory ice cream twice a week. Twice a week seems extreme, Aaron protested. They're the rules, Daddy. Do I need to make another sign? Sve squeezed Penny's hand, her eyes shining. I believe the protocol when faced with such a formidable negotiator is unconditional surrender. See, Daddy, she gets it. Aaron looked at his daughter, then at the remarkable woman fate had sent to their cafe terrace. He saw the future. Not a fairy tale, but something better. Messy, complicated, real. A future built not on forgetting the past, but on choosing a different path forward. Together. Yeah, he said, his voice full of a quiet, steady certainty. I think she finally does. They walked home, the three of them, under the artificial constellations of Covenant City. A man, a child, and a dragon woman, their shadows merging into one on the polished street. Their story wasn't about grand victories or galactic change. It was simpler, and therefore stronger. It was about a choice, made on an ordinary afternoon, to be kind. And about the extraordinary truth that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do, the most human thing, is to ask for a connection, and have the courage to accept it when it's offered.